Welcome, 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 everybody. I'm so excited that you're here. My name is Mike DeLuca. I am the host, and this is the Integrative Wellness and Development Podcast. Many of you have attended in the past, so you know that this podcast is developed by me and my company, Integrative Wellness and Development. It is not associated with any other company, any other organization, any other group. It is strictly my research and my desire to educate and a result of my endless curiosity to learn more about life, learn more about how to live a better, healthier, happier life, and also to discover more of the secrets of life. And so, because of that, I have this show. There are no sponsors other than me. I do not get any revenue from this. You do not get charged for it. It is my gift of love to you. It's also sort of my gift of love. I have a brand new granddaughter this year, actually last year, and I'm recording these shows so that someday she'll look at it and say, "Boy, Grandpa was weird. What was all that stuff he was talking about?" She'll be able to watch these videos and learn a little bit more about me and my life. And I think it's been an amazing life. And so that's the other reason I record these shows. Most of all, I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to live the life I've lived and want to share these gifts with you. I care about you all. I love you all. And I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to share this. It just really opens my heart when we'll do a show and people actually want to come and watch it and are interested and leave wonderful comments. And so that's sort of the icing on the cake. But the real joy of doing this show is in the sharing. So I want to apologize. The original video for this episode, what I learned about life from my airplane, somehow got damaged. It's not showing properly in Facebook. So I am re-recording that video. And also, I have a bunch of other cool stuff to talk about that I did in the original recording. So I think it'll be worth our while to revisit the topic. And I wanted to show you a picture of my airplane, which is the picture on my Facebook. I no longer own this plane. When my children came along, it was time for me to give up flying. It was dangerous, it was expensive, and it required a lot of time. All of those things became second priority when you have a family. And but flying has always been a dream of mine. When I was a little kid, I used to fly in my dreams. And that sense of freedom, that sense of boundlessness, just it filled my heart. It kind of haunted me as well. I wanted to do that. I grew up, my dad was in the space program. He was involved with the Apollo space program. He worked with astronauts. When that program was done, he transitioned over to building Navy fighter aircraft, and he worked with some of the greatest Navy test pilots of the 20th century. And I later on had a chance to work at that company and build fighter aircraft and be around these pilots and watch them do incredible things. And that just stirred my desire to fly. He made it even stronger. Um, I did join Air Force ROTC and was about to enter into the Air Force. The Vietnam War ended prior to me entering into the Air Force, so I decided to pursue a different career. But it still haunted me, that goal. And I'm telling you this background story here because when we have a goal, and it's a goal that's so important to us, and it's a goal associated with achieving a greater level of freedom, a greater level of breaking beyond bonds of limitation. It's important that we take that goal and we put 100% of our creativity into it, our concentration, our creativity, and learn how to collaborate with others to make that goal happen. And that's exactly what happened for me. Um, as you know, I went through a period of life where for a year I was homeless. I lived in my car. I lived in tents. I was fortunate enough to live on people's couches. Uh, while I was pursuing the goal of a better career, and the things that I learned from that, and again, these three principles about concentration, creativity, and collaboration, these helped me go from living on the street to working for a Fortune 500 company in less than a year. And in less than a year, I went from sleeping in a car to riding on corporate jets, and that in itself was an amazing story. But I still hungered to be able to fly by myself, fly an airplane myself. And just a few years after starting that career, I decided, it's time. I was single. I had achieved the goal of purchasing a condominium. So now I was a homeowner. And it was time for me to pursue the goal of flying and getting my pilot's license. So I did. I went, I put the time and effort. It was hours and hours and hours and months and months and months of training. And I was fortunate. I had some great flight instructors. One of them was an F-16, former F-16 pilot in the NATO Air Force. And he was a great instructor. And I eventually, after working really, really hard, received my pilot's license. And so that opened up a door of tremendous learning for me. And I thought I'd share with you some of the things that I've learned from attaining my pilot's license and then flying for several years. Just wonderful, wonderful lessons were learned there. So I'm going to share some of them with you. And I think they're things that you'll be able to apply in your life, just as I've applied in mine. So I'm going to switch my background here. And I'm going to share my screen and talk to you a little bit about what I learned about life from an airplane. Okay. So, first things first, what I learned about life from my airplane was first, you have to be physically, emotionally, and mentally prepared to fly above the limitations of everyday life, right? And in flying, it's important that you take care of your health, and you actually have to pass a rigorous medical exam. Even before you get your license to train, you need to, have a medical exam from an FAA medical examiner to show that you are capable of withstanding the pressures of flying. There's a tremendous amount of stress. It's important you don't have high blood pressure or that it's corrected. It's important that you have your vision is appropriate. Lots and lots of things go into the medical test, but you need to certify that you have the health and you have the knowledge and the skills to pursue this goal, right? And I had to do, a standard many hours of ground school, studying aerodynamics, studying flight, the rules, the laws, lots of rules and laws involved in flying, not just on how to operate the aircraft safely, but also about operating in the world of flying in the skies with lots of other people, dealing with air traffic control, and dealing with other pilots and their behaviors. So very much a life lesson there. You need to pass, in addition to the FAA flight physical, you have to attend, graduate, pass ground school. You have to achieve the required minimum hours of flight instruction with an FAA certified flight instructor. And now here's, a similarity to life. If you have a goal that you really want to achieve, it's really important not just learning the what and how to do it, but learning the who is going to be able to help you achieve that goal. And the who has to be someone who's achieved it, has to be someone who knows a whole lot more about it than you do, and is someone who is a good teacher and can impart that information to you while empowering you to discover that inside of yourself. Right. And so that's something that I learned that I've used over and over again. The importance of knowing what you want, knowing how to get it, but then finding who is going to be the best person to help you, and then be willing to do the work. No matter what you want to achieve in life, you have to be willing to do the work. Right. And for me, achieving the required number of hours, both with the instructor and then solo flight without the instructor. And then eventually I had to do 3 cross-country flights, 3 legs, and land at 3 different airports and complete that successfully. And then I went on to go through my flight test administered by a certified FAA examiner. So again, it's important that you have the skills in anything that you want to accomplish. And I was very, very grateful to have great teachers, great training, and also a wonderful aircraft. That aircraft was really a gift from life. A few people and I were able to get together, and because flying is expensive, but we were able to get together, pool our resources, and purchase an aircraft from a pilot, an airline pilot, who was moving and decided to sell his aircraft. And he had just put a new engine in, and he had dual instruments, and it really was a gift. But, it's part of that being so focused on wanting to fly and wanting to own a plane and just doing everything possible that I could, concentrating on it, being creative and collaborating with other people. And we were able to purchase this aircraft. So again, that concentration, that creativity, and that collaboration really came in again to helping me achieve that goal. Okay. The next step that I learned about life as I was learning to fly was it's important for you to plan your flight. And then it's important to follow your plan, but then be ready to adjust your plan. And you really, to be safe in flying, just like to be safe and successful in life, you can't just wing it. It's really important that you know, where are you right now? Where do you want to be? And then what's the best route to get there? And then what are going to be some of the potential challenges along the way, right? And then you have to look at, what are my resources? Do I have enough resources to get me to where I want to go? And in flying, you plan out with a map, you plan out your route, you look at the maps, and you look at what are all the obstructions, towers. There are more and more cell towers and transmission towers and power towers, all kinds of obstacles in the way, mountains that you have to make sure you don't fly into. So the planning is really important. And also, it's important when you have that flight plan, it's important that you, in real flying, that you file that flight plan with the FAA so they know that you are actually going to be going through this airspace. And they also know that you're planning on ending up at a particular destination. And if you don't call in and cancel that flight plan, then they know there's something wrong. and then they will send people to look for you. You might have had an accident and had not been able to call for help. And so it's important that, again, that collaboration, it's important to collaborate and make sure that you have other people around you who know what you're doing and where you're going and can possibly assist you. Okay. Those resources, when I was flying, you had to calculate fuel. How much fuel did I have? Because you can't just kind of pull over to the side of the road with a gas can when you run out of fuel in an airplane. You run out of fuel, you have to land. And that's either a safe landing or a crash landing. So I always made sure that I never had less than a quarter to a half a tank of gas in the plane. I would plot my flight. I would estimate how much gasoline it would use, how much fuel it would use, and then always make sure if it was a long, long flight that I had some breaks where I would land, I'd refuel, and then continue to the next leg, right? So fuel, do I have enough time to get to my location if there's bad weather coming up or if it's getting dark? At the time, I was not a flying instrument rating. I only was IFR. Did I have the strength, the stamina to make the duration of the flight without getting too tired? When you get tired, you're unsafe. That's just like in driving a car, flying a plane, same thing. You want to make sure that you're in good health, you feel good, you've had plenty of rest, and you're not tired. Other things you have to do is weight and balance. You have to make sure the aircraft is balanced, that you have the right amount of weight on the left side of the plane, balanced out by the right amount of weight on the right side of the plane, and you have to adjust. So balance is really key to safe flying, and also balance is key to safe living, right? It's important we live a balanced life if we want to achieve the goals that we have. So I talked about filing the flight plan. I talked about mapping your route. Along the way, and this is a really important thing I learned about life is when you have a goal, and I wanted to fly from this airport to that airport. Um, the longer the route, the more important it was in my planning to mark small checkpoints, right? So that I knew I was on course and I had a sense of accomplishment. When I went from checkpoint one to checkpoint two, and I was on course and I was on time, I knew that everything was going properly. I had done the right things. And it gave me the confidence, okay, we're going to move on now to checkpoint three and checkpoint four. And I was building momentum of confidence. Now, unfortunately, in the air, things happen, right? Winds blow you off course. If they blow you off course, you then have to check the maps and figure out, okay, where am I? And roads, highways, rivers, power lines below, buildings. These are all things that can help you figure out where you are so you can adjust. And that's an important thing I learned about life is life does not always flow in a straight line, right? Sometimes you have to go east a little bit, and then sometimes you have to go west, and then eventually you get to go north. But life is going to happen, and it's important that while you're moving through your checkpoints, that you have plan Bs of being able to figure out where you are when you're not on course. And that's why careful planning helps, right? Planning, measuring, knowing that, I have these goals for the year, I have these goals for the month, I have these goals for the week, and I have these goals for the day. And by having little small checkpoints along the way, when you get really off course, by having small goals, it actually prevents you from getting too far off course off course because you can make smaller corrections. And in flying, this is really important. Unlike, steering a car, to move the car, you have to move the steering wheel with a little bit of force. With an aircraft, it's just fingertip moving to get on course. If you adjust too hard, you'll go way off course the other direction, and then you have to adjust again. And if you adjust too hard, you go way off course in the other direction. So smaller, little by little adjustments, incremental adjustments, help you stay on course without wasting a lot of time and energy, right? So there's all kinds of things that are going to affect you while you're flying. Wind, there are magnetic variances in different spots along your route. The curvature of the earth actually affects your navigation. So that's really important. And also having a plan B. And in flying, that was really understanding where the emergency landing sites lay along your route. And this is really important. Stuff happens, right? Stuff happens. So I always made sure that I did a very careful study of the route I was flying. And I knew where there was highways, roads. I knew where there were fields, farmland, right? Big open space. So that if I had to land, and I only had one engine, so if that engine went, I was now flying a glider. And a glider, my aircraft could only glide 14 miles before it needed to land. So I had wiggle room of 14 miles, but I had to use that up, finding the place to land, and then maybe circling a little bit to get into the right position. So planning again is really important. Having those plan Bs and Cs of, if some emergency happens, what are my options here? Okay, it's really important to have those options. So learned a lot from that. Um, yeah, it's important to make sure that your aircraft is really, really ready. And that means your body, your emotions, your mental ability, your financial ability, even your spiritual capability, right, is really important. And, pilots, you live and die by your planning and by your pre-flight and then by safe, flying of the aircraft. So this is really important. We had to do a check where you had to obviously make sure you had enough fuel. You also had to go to my aircraft had two winged fuel tanks. And if you know anything about gasoline, in fuel tanks, water condenses into the bottom of the fuel tank. And if you do not drain that water out, that water can get into the engine and it could cause your engine to stop. And again, the engine is what is keeping you up in the air in that aircraft. So it was really important that I made sure that the fuel in the aircraft was clean, right? It was pure. There was no water condensation going on in there. And I had to take the time to drain that. You actually had a little cup with a pin and you stuck it up into this special hole and you just kept draining and draining and draining the water until it was just fuel, that kind of brownish fuel. Um, what did I learn about life? Really important. I make sure what is going into my engine is pure, right? That I have the right fuel and I have pure fuel going in there. I had to make sure my propeller was safe. It did not have any nicks, did not have any cracks in it, right? If you're going to achieve a goal that is, a challenging one that it might not be so safe, and one that's going to require tremendous effort and distance, you want to make sure that everything on that aircraft is safe. And a teeny nick in a propeller, when a propeller is spinning at such high force, the propeller could develop a crack. You know, like when you get a little hole in your windshield, a pebble hits your windshield and you get a little crack. If you don't take care of that crack, it gets bigger and bigger, and finally the windshield has this giant crack in it. Well, when that happens to a propeller, the propeller can break, and then you're in trouble because it can't keep the plane, in the sky, and you're going to have a problem and have to land. So checking the propeller, checking the wings, the struts, checking your control surfaces, the ailerons, which cause you to turn left or turn right, the rudder in the back, which allows you to balance your turns left and right. Okay. The tail elevators, right, cause you to go up and down. All of that you have to check and work with and make sure they work. There's no obstructions. A little tiny screw out of place can cause your aircraft to crash. Okay, so you really have to be diligent, right? Your tires, your landing gear, right? The pitot tubes that bring air into the instrumentation to allow your instruments to work. You have to make sure that's all functioning. You have to make sure you untie the ropes that keep your aircraft tied, right? Which means, in life, you have to look at what is holding me back. If I want to move forward, not just planning the things I need to do to move forward, but I need to look at what are the things that could be holding me back. I could be tied down to things that are preventing me from achieving my goals and my dreams. It's important that we remove those things. And also, we have to remove any protective items. We had, these foam cow covers that cover the air intake going into the engine. Those have to be removed. We had covers on the pitot tube that had to be removed, right? Lots of things you have to go around the plane and make sure it's safe. I mentioned weight and balance. It's really important. When I took my FAA flight exam, I'm a big guy, and the FAA examiner was a big guy, and I didn't realize it was going to be two big guys. So I had a full um, load of fuel in the aircraft. And the weight and balance didn't work out. There was too much weight between the two large people, the aircraft weight itself, and the fuel. It was too much weight for the aircraft to fly safely. So I had to have probably, an eighth to a quarter of a tank of fuel removed from the aircraft in order to fly safely. And that was important that I showed the examiner that I knew how to do proper weight and balance and I knew how to correct the problem. I also had to make sure that I had appropriate emergency gear. I had in the back of my aircraft, I had emergency flotation devices and, emergency swimwear, so to speak. I had, even though my aircraft had an emergency beacon, I also had an emergency flashing beacon, and I also had spare radios in case the radio went, and make sure I had supplies if I happened to have a landing somewhere and it took a long time for people to get to me. I had appropriate things to keep me warm and safe and dry and such. And I had all kinds of checklists. You live and die by your planning. You live and die by your pre-flight. You live and die by your checklist. And so I made sure that, to achieve the goal of a safe flight, that I followed the checklist, right? And every aspect of operating the aircraft has a checklist. And it's important to follow that. It's the same way when you're trying to achieve a goal in life. Important to have a good detailed checklist each day, and you're working through that. Winging it and being creative and going with the flow is really important, but also having that checklist and a plan is key. Then you have to make sure you and your passenger are strapped in safe. It is not it's not a choice. It's mandatory. Everybody has to be belted in, and that's how you survive in a problem. Um, then you have to make sure that your cockpit is ready, that your instruments are all fully functional, the controls are all functioning properly, fuel, engine settings, propeller, radios, navigation is all set. Then you have to receive proper instructions and permission, right? Often when we are pursuing a goal, there is going to be required from time to time that we collaborate with authority and get permission to do the things we need to do. We can't just storm out and do certain things. We need to have proper permissions. And so, you radio ground control, you receive permission to taxi to the runway, they assign you, then, you radio the tower, permission to take off from that runway, and then radio departure control. They guide you to a certain point, and then you are handed off to approach control for the airspace you are flying into, and then again to the airport you're going to be landing in, and then again, there's the tower. You switch over to them, and then there's ground control after that. So lots of permissions, lots of communication, lots of adjusting of your radio. There's also a transponder. We called it the squawk box. You would be given a frequency to dial in on your transponder, and that would alert air traffic control of your flight, your aircraft, and its position, its altitude, its direction. So, I mean, all of these details are important that you do to fly safe and fly legally, right? And also, it's important that you fly in the proper heading that you are given and the proper altitude that you are given, right? When you fly in a certain direction, you flew even even 1,000 feet altitude, plus 500. The other direction, odd, plus 500. And again, there's aircraft and things in the air. So if you do not keep to the assigned altitude, you can have a problem. And it's actually illegal, and you could lose your license if you do a grievous change after you've been told not to do that. So lots of changes and adjustments along the way. When you're in flight, flying, man, there are so many things you need to be keeping your attention on, right? You are monitoring what's going on outside your aircraft. You're monitoring your airspeed, right? Airspeed is the other thing that's life, right? I said, planning, right? The planning, the safety inspections, the communication, altitude. Well, airspeed is life. What's keeping you up in the air is airspeed, right? So you're monitoring your airspeed. You're making sure it's not going too high. If it's too high, it can, tax the engine. It's not too low. If it's too low, you'll lose altitude. The pitch of the plane, when you pitch up too much, you lose airspeed and you stall, right? So you're all kinds of things. Your rudder, right? You need to be applying right rudder appropriately to counteract the fact that the propeller is turning to the left, counterclockwise, and if you don't apply right rudder, you'll go into a spin. So all of these, details, scanning in all directions, up, down, left, right, checking for potential problems, making sure you have a plan B solution, right? Confirming that your aircraft, your route, the runway that you are approaching, you're on the right approach to that. There's a process. You don't just fly to a runway and land. You enter into a pattern Most of the airports I flew into had left downwind patterns. So the runway was here and you entered on downwind on a 45-degree angle and then went parallel to the runway. And then you flew, then you made a base turn, then you made a turn to final, you were on final approach, and then you put flaps, you reduced airspeed, and eventually you landed the aircraft, right? It's important you follow those directions and you practice them and you follow the checklist because if you don't, you might be flying too low and you will crash before you reach the runway. If you're flying too high, you might overrun the runway and have to, you know, do a pass, do a fly around, a go around, right? So lots of details, and you can see similarities to things that go on in life, right? Um, so when it's time to land, you're looking at all of these things, right? You're confirming all of these things, you're checking for potential problems, uh, proper altitude, distances, you're making sure the engine settings are proper, right? As the aircraft is slowing down in a carburetor equipped, aircraft, older aircrafts, no fuel injection, you had to make sure carburetor heat was being applied. Uh, you know, there's all kinds of things that are important to do. And then also, as you're getting ready to land, not only do you have visual, you have instruments telling you, how far up off the ground you are. You have your vision cues, but you're also using your kinesthetic cues. Your body is feeling the ground getting closer. You get into what's called ground effect, and the plane is no longer flying from the propeller. It's flying just from the cushion of the air underneath the aircraft. You have to properly dissipate that until your wheels hit the ground. And you know, it's never every flight is never a smooth flight, and adjustments need to be made, and training is really important. The airport I flew from had only one runway. When you have only one runway, you have two choices, right? You could fly the approach, let's say, it's 9-0, right? If that's the approach, or it's 180, right? Um, so the wind does not always cooperate, right? So if you're flying a heading of due north and you're approaching the runway, and all of a sudden, instead of the wind being directly coming at you, which is what you're supposed to be doing, you need to be heading into the wind for takeoff because that gives you lift, and you need to be landing into the wind, right? Because that allows you to safely approach and dissipate airspeed safely to land. The airport I landed at all the time, the wind rarely cooperated. So I was on approach many, many times coming in, right? And then all of a sudden, instead of the wind being behind me, the wind decided it's going to come from the west, right? So the wind is the boss. So I had to change the way that I landed. And this is important in life. Things do not always happen the way you plan them. So I would be approaching, and all of a sudden the wind would change. So instead of my normal straight in approach, I had to face the wind. So here's the wind. I had to have my nose facing the wind. So my airplane was actually flying sideways towards the runway. That's called crabbing. So what you do is you're flying into the wind sideways, adjusting, and then just before, as you're getting closer to touchdown, you're slowly pointing the nose forward, but you're still crabbing into the wind. And then all of a sudden, in the last second, you turn and you bop down on one wheel. For most of the time, it was the right wheel. And then you move over and you bop down on the other rear wheel, and you put the nose wheel down, and now you've safely landed. But it is one of the scariest things in the world, that first time that you have to transition from flying straight ahead to crabbing. And doesn't that happen in life all the time, right? You've been doing something the same way, or you're doing something the way you plan, and all of a sudden you really have to concentrate, and now you have to be creative, and you have to change your approach, right? You have to change your approach, and you have to follow the checklist on how to do that. But because you've done it over and over and over and over in your training, it becomes second nature. And you can feel when it's the right time to slowly adjust and then hit down on that one wheel and bring the second wheel down, right? Again, that training. And it's not only important to train and plan, anticipating everything that goes right, but you have to practice what happens when things go wrong. And also, you have to practice sometimes making the thing go wrong to discover what to do to correct it. And in flying, there was a maneuver. Well, there's a situation that happens if you're flying the aircraft and you're pitching the nose up too high because you want to climb too quickly. And anytime you want to climb too quickly, both in flying and in life, if your pitch and your attempt is greater than the aircraft's ability to generate airspeed, what happens is you stall. The wings no longer have the proper amount of air flying over them and under them, and you stop flying. And when you stop flying, the nose of the aircraft is the heaviest part of the plane, wants to go down first. Boom, right? So that is one of the scariest things in flying is when you stall. Fortunately, there's a horn that's warning you. Sometimes in life we have those warnings. Maybe we get warnings in our health, and maybe we should go and have some checkups done because we have certain feelings something's wrong here. Or we get warnings in a test, from a medical test. Or in our business, we get warnings. We're watching numbers, we're watching things that are happening during the week and the month, and we realize, ooh, there's a warning there. Heed the warning. Don't try to just plow through. And I tell you, it was the scariest thing, the learning to stall. I had a real problem forcing the plane into a stall because I was afraid I was going to crash. And I remember the first time my instructor was teaching me to work with a stall. You pull back, the nose is going up, it's going up, and then, you pull back just enough, the horn is going, and then the plane stalls. And I could not get myself to stall the plane, right? And the instructor said, look, let's try it a couple of times. I said, I'm scared. He said, all right, it's the end of the hour anyway. Let's go back. He said, but you can't move forward in your training until you learn to deal with the fear of stalling, the fear of crashing, right? I equivalent this to the fear of failing and also the fear of death. Sometimes fear of failure and fear of death stops us from achieving our goals and moving forward in life. And these are things that you really have to practice getting through. And I had to practice. And actually, what happened was, I used to practice my flying maneuvers in my head before going to sleep. And, fighter pilots do this. If you ever watch in preparation, not only do they fly in their aircraft, they fly in simulators, they fly with virtual reality goggles now, but sometimes they just sit at a desk with their eyes closed and they go through the maneuvers. I've actually watched a film of the Blue Angels actually rehearsing, sitting at a desk and calling out the maneuvers they're doing as they're physically doing them with their eyes closed, right? So I'd do that before I go to sleep. I'd rehearse over and over this maneuver of stalling. And, to recover from a stall, first of all, it's terrifying to where and then the nose drops and you're heading right to the ground, right? That's not a comfortable thing. The recovery from a stall is totally illogical. And that is a scary thing. And why is it a scary thing? To recover from a stall, right? What you have to do is you have to put the throttle full throttle and point the nose down towards the ground even further. So you're literally flying right at the ground, but then you are slowly adjusting the nose of the aircraft to build airspeed. That's why you're pointing the nose down with full throttle. You need to build airspeed quick. And then you have to have a really clear head, don't panic, and then slowly bring yourself to where you're flying straight and level, and then you're gaining airspeed. And then that's how you recover from the stall. All the time keeping right rudder to not allow the force of the plane, the torque of the propeller, to spin you into the ground. So lots of things you have to remember to do. But I tell you, that was like, what? I have to point the plane down and put full power heading right to the ground to recover from a stall? Yeah, that's what you have to do. And so I was rehearsing this one night. I fell asleep and I had a dream where I'm flying the aircraft and I go into a stall, I pull it up, I go into the stall, and the plane starts heading down, and I push the nose down, I push full throttle, and boom, I crash into the ground. Crash into the ground, plane explodes, and then I'm just sitting there and I'm fine. And I realized I needed to have that dream. I needed to lose that fear of crashing the plane and dying and recognizing that, what's truly me never dies. Soul is immortal. But I had to go through that experience and then lose the fear. And then the next time I got into the aircraft, I did the stall, I did it perfectly, nose down, full throttle, and then slowly bring up the nose of the aircraft, and then you slowly reduce throttle and you continue flying safely. So sometimes the fear of failure and the fear of death can hold us back, and we need to grab that. You need to grab it right by the steering wheel, and you need to take control. And again, by practicing and doing things little step at a time, little step at a time, this is what's going to allow you to overcome those fears. And also rehearsing things that you are. I rehearse everything I've ever learned to do, and I rehearse everything I'm asked to do. I rehearse it inwardly in my meditations, right? Before I go to sleep. And eventually, sometimes that seeps into your dreams, and you can rehearse things in your dreams, right? So it's really important that we face these fears, and the best way of facing them is by being prepared and having confidence, right? I have confidence in myself because of my training and my preparation and the hard work. I have confidence in the spirit of life. I have that incredible trust that life only has the best, for me in its beingness. And no matter what happens to me, I trust it's for the best. And I'll always be looking for the best. And I will never stop setting goals, even though I've retired, I've closed my business, and now I do this podcast. I do it out of love. It's a gift to you, it's a gift to me. But I never stop learning. I never stop preparing. I never stop looking at where could I go? What more could I do? How could I, most importantly now, I look at each day, how can I be the best version of me, right? And while enjoying myself, enjoying my life, and how can I create the greatest amount of value for me, my family, the world? And so, every time I create one of these shows, you're in my heart, and I'm looking to create the best value I can for you. By doing that, I'm creating the best value for life itself, for the spirit of life, for whatever you want to call that higher power. Whatever it is we love to do it with the best effort we can, with the best planning, the best skills, and do it with love and do it to serve. And if you do that, you will be flying straight, you'll be flying safely, and there'll be incredible, beautiful skies there for you to fly in. So, I want to end with a couple of questions for you. First question. What similarities did you see in my description of the learning to fly and the flying of the aircraft and living our lives? What similarities did you see between those two things? Take a moment, right? Contemplate on it, write it down, think about it during each day, and see how you can apply some of these lessons I learned into living a bigger, better, healthier, happier life, right? And how can you apply these things into your life to live a bigger, better, healthier life? I'll leave you with those two questions. Again, I want to apologize that the original version of this session did not work out, and I'm going to be replacing it with this. And so this is what you'll see. And I want to encourage you to come back next week and watch another recording. By popular demand, I've been asked to bring back the recording of an incredible interview that I did with an incredible woman, a incredible human being. Her name is Sandra Mendelson. Um, I did this interview with Sandra earlier on in the year. She's written two incredible books, We Walk Beside You and We Walk Beside You, Book Two. She has the amazing ability to communicate with animals. And more importantly, she has the ability to learn from what they are telling her and to share that wisdom with us. And so this was a great interview, a wonderful recording. I invite you to watch it. It'll be coming up next week. And then it just stays on my Facebook page. And the link to my YouTube channel for it will be there as well. So I look forward to sharing this interview with Sandra with you again next week. So anyway, I want to thank you for joining me. Thank you for flying with me today. And for those of you who know me and who we share time with every week or we've shared time with for years and decades, thank you for flying with me all these years. Know how much I love you, how much I'm grateful to be able to share this time with you, these experiences with you, these learnings with you. I really care about you. I want your life to be the best life it can be. I have a little bit of wisdom and a little bit of experiences that I think might be valuable to you. So I share them. You can watch them on my YouTube channel. If you can watch them on Facebook, my Facebook page, if you're a Facebook friend. Um, I invite you to go and watch that. Take some of it and learn from it. And, my kids and my grandkids and my future great grandkids, hopefully they will watch this when I'm long gone and say, maybe he wasn't so crazy. Maybe he had something, valuable to share. I think I do. And I hope you found it so. So love you all. Have a great rest of your day, rest of your week. I hope to see you again next week. Have a great life, and I will see you again soon. So thanks again for joining me, and take care.